Hello everybody. We are now continuing with our work in petal number 9. And this is program number 59, and it's part 3 of the synthesis for petal number 9. And this other one lasted, let's just say, 2 hours and 1 minute. Okay, well, we've gone through the extra zodiacal constellations, and we have discussed the ways in which the various constellations might relate to the experiences to be undergone in petal number 9. I hope when we get into the synthesis petals we'll be able to take a look at how all of these different energies might contribute to that completing the great task of synthesis that is primarily to be undertaken between the third and the fourth initiation. Everything can contribute in some way, and synthesis is the objective. All right. So point number 37, what is the synthesizing planet most associated with this tier and petal? Well, it is Uranus. You know, when we look at Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus, Uranus is connected very much with the mental plane, with the power of will, and with the kind of sacrifice whereby the archetype is substituted for the condition. So many of us live with certain conditions that are not archetypal, and eventually we must learn to substitute the way something should be for the way it is, or temporarily is anyway. So with Uranus, we do meet the Hierophant in this particular petal. And the Hierophant is considered to be Uranus. Sanat Kumara is Uranus, just as we have the Christ as Neptune. What division of the planetary triplicity is most associated with this petal? It is Uranus sub-Uranus, just like we have Sacrifice sub-Sacrifice is very good for Transfiguration. It's very good for the final conditioning of matter so that it moves more and more towards atomic matter in each vehicle. So Uranus means the sacrifice of all. How did I put this? Yeah, Uranus is what you are. Right, it's the archetype. So the sacrifice of all that you are not for what you are. The sacrifice of all. In other words, conditions are not necessarily what we are. They are simply creations we have built. But what we are is an inner standing wave, an inner pattern, an inner archetype, which is part of the ideation of God, our planetary logos. So all conditions are sacrificed for realities, for the actual identity. We are oriented towards the formless worlds. We are moving beyond form. We're moving into the higher mental plane. We sometimes consider that formless. It's not really formless, utterly, but compared to the lower 18 subplanes, it is formless. And Uranus also rules the cosmic ethers, which are even more formless than what is found on the 3 higher levels of the mental plane. Uranus is electric fire. It's the home of electric fire, we've been told. It is wielded by Sanat Kumara, who is the Hierophant, and symbolically at least is Uranus. I wouldn't be surprised that the rod of power, the flaming diamond, would be charged with Uranian energy. So Christ is Neptune, Sanat Kumara is Uranus from the planetary perspective. Now, when we look at the neighboring planets, we call them Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Those are neighboring our Earth. What is the planet most associated with this petal? I would say it's Mercury. Not the only one, certainly. It's the completing of the mental part of the Antakarana and touching of the Buddhic level, with which Mercury is also related, even as it is related to the abstract mind. And even there is a connection of the 5 levels of mind, with Mercury possibly connected to the atomic plane, the mind that is the law. This idea of 5 minds unite came from our recently departed colleague Robert Girard, departed at the ripe old age of 95, or was it 96? Amazing life in psychology, and he used to say it's not just 3 minds unite, it's 5 minds unite, and I think that is true. The Mercury sub-Mercury relates to the 3 minds, particularly to the 3 minds which are uniting. What division of the neighboring planetary triplicity is most associated with this petal? Well, I would say Mercury sub-Mercury. Just as it's sacrifice sub-sacrifice. Mercury sub-Mercury relates to the union of Buddhi and Manas, the reaching from the higher mind into the intuitive mind, the reaching down from intuitive impression into abstract formulation. It's yellow and yellow together. Both Mercury is the planet most related to the color yellow. So many different types of minds are uniting at this point, trying to form one fused mental field. Interesting that Mercury is half an angel and half a human. And that's pretty much what a human being is. Part angel, part human. Increasingly, the angel, to be fully human, is in a way to become the angel. So Mercury is part of what we call the divine hermaphrodite, Hermes, Mercury, Aphrodite, Venus. There is the marriage in the heavens that is occurring here. Mercury is also related to the serpent power and the Kundalini, which is coiled 3.5 times and which must rise intelligently, and also to the Ajna center, which causes the rising of the Kundalini or directs it upward. Mercury is definitely a planet related not only to discipleship but to the 4th degree, along with Saturn, whereas Venus has a relation, I'd say, more to the 3rd degree. Think about the role of Scorpio, whose hierarchical ruler is Mercury, the role of Scorpio in the 4th degree. Not much specified except that the egoic lotus must be brought to the stage of death, Scorpio being that sign of death. The human mind is more the Mercury-Venus mind, and when we talk about Buddhi and Manas together, we can talk about Mercury sub-Venus or intuitive Mercury related to Mercury-Venus on the monastic level, on the level of higher mind. Also, I'm not sure why I inserted this here, but we have Sagittarius, Leo, and Gemini. These are 3 signs related to individualization. They're all important here. Mercury, with its winged heels, is even important in Sagittarius when we read in that chapter of the arrow with wings. So it's the Mercury sub-Mercury polarity. Now, there are many planets which can achieve the tasks here, but the tasks are largely perceptual, intuitive, mental, perceptual tasks. It's true that the will becomes very dominant and the will to sacrifice becomes overpowering, but at least in terms of the neighboring planets, Mercury is the primary one to be associated with this petal. What about the Sun-Moon polarity? You know, Moon always representing form, Sun, soul, and spirit. So this is the real marriage here at the 9th petal of the Sun and the Moon. The Sun representing the higher self, the self on the higher mental plane working through the egoic lotus, and the Moon representing all of the personality vehicles. The Sun, interestingly, is exalted in Aries, and this represents pure being. the moon is in detriment in Capricorn, which represents the third initiation. So let's just put it like this. The moon, which is really a part of the Earth scheme, or at least was, is no longer prominent in the processes of this petal, except to continue to fall away into insignificance. That exalted sun, however, is very important. The exalted sun reminds me of the soul of India, which has the Ray 1 Aries soul, and the sun of pure being is exalted in the Indian consciousness as the Brahman. Not Brahma, but Brahman. So we begin with the enlightenment and the Satori and the illumination and so forth to begin a sense of what the great sages of the Upanishads were talking about. Just another couple of things. Fourth initiation ruled by Ray 4. Interestingly, Mercury is Ray 4 in its soul nature. The moon is Ray 4. The moon is dying. It's falling away. At the second degree, it represents the desire nature which dies. And when it dies at the fourth degree through its fall, it represents the entire persona. The moon is weakened, interestingly, in Capricorn at the third degree, and falls away entirely at the fourth, in which Scorpio plays a part, but then so do other constellations. Anyway, the end of ancient personality domination, so we're definitely in a very solar area here. This is the first solar initiation taken at the ninth petal. So the sun has a very powerful place here. So we are well beyond any real contest between the sun and moon polarity. Let's just say that some of the last vestiges of the lunar problem have been taken care of with the successful overcoming of the temptations in the desert. And now we are moving even beyond that point. So there is still a fight, but what is the fight? Once we've taken the third degree, all the battle is over, this particular battle, but what is the fight immediately before? I think it's all about, well, it's really about the will of the soul and that aspect of the dweller on the threshold which presents itself as the powerful personality, pretty much ruled by Mars more than the moon. The moon rules more the vehicles, and Mars the entirety of the personality which is going to fight against the spiritual will. Now, let's look here at number 42, different planets which may be implicated and the reasons for this implication. What have I listed? Vulcan, Mercury, Venus. I've skipped the Earth, though interestingly it is the esoteric ruler of Sagittarius, much associated with this petal. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, pretty much including them all. Well, Vulcan is the blinding light. The seven will head centers are now in control, and perhaps something of their development and their activation at the third degree has released the blinding light, of which St. Paul became the victim. He was struck by that light of the will, maybe an aspect of the light of life itself coming into prominence as the third degree is taken. Mercury is definitely here, and we're moving from higher mind into the transcendental mind of Buddhi, which is the intuition. So again, even embodied in Mercury itself, not having to have recourse to another planet, we find Buddhi and Manas both. Mercury is a fine expression of both Buddhi and Manas. Wherever there is the mental process, we can find Mercury. Venus. Well, what is its key signature here? It is the hierarchical ruler of Capricorn, and has to do with the bringing in of the sublime light. Venus in Capricorn is a very high position, an elevated position. It's like the exaltation of the soul as light and love. And at this point, even though Mars rules the lunar vehicles, over which Sagittarius has some dominion, it is Venus which wins. Venus triumphs over Mars. It really must these days. Some of the great wars occurring, even the battle of the sexes and the war between men and women in certain societies, maybe in all, but in certain societies prominently, is all about the battle between the sacred planet Venus and the non-sacred planet Mars, which in certain forms of expression has outlived its usefulness. But let's just say Mars is involved here. Yes, the striving continues. And we have the powerful use of the energies of the personality given entirely in dedication and devotion to the soul. Mars is the representative of the selfish personality which realizes in this petal that it is indeed conquered. So if the energies of Mars can be detached from the ahamkara, or from that limited sense of I-ness, they can serve a higher purpose. Jupiter is here, the crisis of expansion, which is initiation, the panoramic vision and understanding which Sagittarius confers, and maybe Capricorn even more, because although Jupiter falls in Capricorn, in another sense it is exalted. And here is the sign most associated with the third initiation. We haven't really thought that Jupiter is most associated with the third. Maybe other planets are more so, but in terms of this great vision of unity and the sense of participatory unity or participation in unity, Jupiter confers such a realization. So there is the liberation of the soul, in a sense. It has achieved its majority, and it no longer is held down. And the sense of joy, joyful Jupiter, the sense of joy is very strong as Jupiter ascends at this point. We normally think that the mountaintop of karma would hold it down, but we do recall that DK talked about that special function of Jupiter in Capricorn, just as a special function of Neptune in Capricorn. They are both Jupiter and Neptune exalted in Cancer, so you think they have to fall in Capricorn, but they don't. They don't. I mean, they may fall for some, but for the true candidate to initiation, they are not falling, and they give that incredible spiritual buoyancy. Planet Saturn, well, yes, Saturn is of the divine plan. Saturn, the hierarchical ruler of Libra. Saturn, Libra, and the triads of the atmic plane, where the divine plan is formulated. So we are understanding how to express that plan in a triadal manner through our newly achieved impersonal life. And certainly we've overcome a great measure of karma, which Saturn has forced us to confront, and we're standing on the mountain top of karma. Our foot is upon it, and we're living out our soul dharma with the mountain of karma no longer holding us down. So even though this is a joyful and expansive petal, so much of a Saturnian nature is involved here, because we really are expressing the divine plan, knowing it in a deeper sense and in a more first-hand sense than we've been able to before. Uranus, well, absolutely, we've been discussing it. We meet the Hierophant, and we are transfigured, which means we're put into a new and more geometric configuration, which accords with the pattern of the purpose. So formless form is the order of the day, and whereas Saturn is a lord of form, very much a lord of form, Uranus is more the lord of formless form. Sometimes I think Neptune is the lord of formlessness altogether. we are translated to the Buddhic plane. Neptune's involved, maybe Uranus is involved. When we reach the 4th degree, we have to begin applying, utilizing the language of formlessness. It doesn't mean that there are not formless forms. At least they are formless in the usual sense of the word. So we are translated into the cosmic ethers here. We have a very high type of occult mind. The intuition is flashing, and the higher patterns are revealed by higher thought. Uranus, I think, also has a lot to do with the abstract mind, with the suddenness of the descent of pure reason, Uranus and Mercury being related, and also to the descent of will, as the Father knows it. So Uranus really can be connected with each of the 3 aspects of the spiritual triad, and this is the petal in which we're beginning to bridge into the spiritual triad. The Antakarana is becoming more effective. We're not just limited by the higher mind, but we are getting antakaranic impulses coming also from the Buddhic plane and maybe from the Atmic plane by resonance. Atma and higher manas being related by resonance. What about Neptune? Well, we enter the transcendental mind of Buddhi and go beyond form, as usually understood. So Neptune contributes to the intuition there and therefore to the conquest of illusion. So when we are transfigured, going beyond recognizable conditioned figuration, Neptune is definitely involved. It helps to dissolve the present figuration, configuration, and to substitute for it something which is far more archetypal and which deals with the realm of purposeful pattern, which is an archetype. Pluto, well, the Kundalini is now activated in a new way, and we're dealing with death of illusion. I sometimes see people with Pluto in the 9th house. You know, it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to die on a foreign trip. It can mean they really apply the powers of the mind to dealing death to illusion. Anyway, Pluto begins to negate the form. And we've been told, interestingly, that Shambhala is consummated in him when he takes the 3rd degree. Well, to what degree consummated? Because we would anticipate also a higher form of consummation with the taking of the higher degrees. But Pluto's not going away, and although it's not a sacred planet, it is an esoteric planet, and we are encouraged to think of Aries, Pluto, Shambhala. Will contact here. Yes. So the base of the spine is heating up under Pluto, but there are other planets involved there, such as Mercury and such as Mars and such as Uranus and even Saturn. So perhaps they cause this rising of the Kundalini in some way together. It's not only Pluto on its own. Certainly Mercury is involved here directing the energy. Well, if we were to look at maybe, we've left out in a sense. Whoa, that's just too big. So I'm trying to get my... Right. Okay, I have my bracket. And that can start off various comments. So one more so-called planet is the Sun. The Sun, very important for its radiance and brilliance of soul. We have to become a sun, sun-like to others. Sun in our heart, sun at the top of our head, sun in our whole aura, so we can help lead other people from darkness to light, and from the unreal to the real, and from death to immortality, and from chaos to beauty, and from the individual to the universal. We are meant to become sons of God, sons of the sun. We're not meant to be points of lunar obstruction, so to speak. We are really meant to be radiant, and one day we will, in aggregation with our fellow spirits, embody perhaps a planet, perhaps the sun, just as the combination of solar angels will become a planetary logos, very mysterious in a sense. My colleague Nicholas, he felt the planet Pluto is very important here, and certainly in terms of death to illusion. This is key, you know. Pluto and the death of illusion. Okay. Yes, Pluto, though a non-sacred planet and demoted recently to the sort of status of a minor planet or planetoid, I think in the later days when Kundalini is fully aroused, will have the last word. Some magazine may say minor planet, but the person passing through these experiences will not be reading magazines. Are there colors involved in this stage and the reasons? Well, we've talked so much about the savage red, the playful green, the ambitious orange, the dark cave, and then the rose and the blue, and the blinding light on the other side of the rose and the blue. We're still in the cave. However, it's getting brighter, and as stated, it's a wider cave now. And we can begin to sense the light behind the rosy cross, you know, as the incentive. Light calls to light. And we're entering an area of the cave where the sun is beginning to shine again, somehow. And we know we have to go through something of a quite demanding nature to find ourselves on the way of higher evolution. But we are willing to do that because of the invitation of the light. So we're still not overturning the rosy cross and the cave. Are there any musical notes involved here? Soul. There we go. It's a bit of a pun, but soul, soul. That's the note G. It's a blue note. From one perspective, from another perspective, it can be considered a violet note if we begin at the note A. That's interesting. You can begin at a C or an A. And when we begin at A, which is after all the first letter in the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, we reach G, and it's the seventh note, just as it is in numerology, standing for the number 7. Well, we are reading beyond the soul. I'm not sure, is that reaching? I think it's reaching. That's what it is. Nothing like correcting typos from, not retching either. Reaching beyond the soul. At this point, we know, we have the intuition that the soul means confinement, as glorious as it is. So it's the dominant note. It's the G note. What about the intervals of musical chords involved in this stage? Well, I wonder if I could do this, you know. If we talk about the third initiation, it might be like this. I'll do it in terms of volume. Do, say it'd be like this. Do, mi, sol, do. Notice the last do is very quiet. It means the spirit is not yet, although noticeable, really prominent. Really, you know, if I was to do this more properly, it might be like this. It might be do, mi, sol, do. The note of matter, the note of personality, both relatively quiet. The note of soul, very strong. The note of spirit, not so strong yet. But if I were the initiate of the 5th degree, it would be more like a do, mi, sol, do. The do would be very strong. And the 6th degree, it would be even stronger. Notice how I put a capital O there for the do instead of just D-O. And there will come the time, of course, do, sol, do, or do, sol, do. There is no personality. What do we do? Finally reach the do-do here. Do, 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 do. Everything becomes the embodied monad, and spirit and matter are united. So it's not only what notes we are singing or playing, it's the intensity of the notes relative to each other. If I'm, let's just say I'm a integrated personality, quite integrated but not yet fully demonstrating soul through my personality, it would be do, mi, sol, do, like that. Me would be the strongest. Me, you know, it's it is I, it is me, should be I. Although people, when they say between he and I, it's all wrong. I think it's between him and me is correct. But it sounds wrong, and too many teachers have over-dignified the use of I in wrong places. Anyway, me is, but in the days before there is personality or soul, it's diminishing. It's like this. Do, mi, sol, do. I can't do it. My voice is a little. Do. Do is the big thing, the note of matter. So it all depends what we choose to emphasize, and eventually it's all spirit matter. Do, 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 do. That's what we call a unison, or at least at the octave, it sounds like a unison. An actual unison is the same note. But when we play notes an octave apart, they are a unison. They sound like the unison. And eventually, you know, at the 6th degree, the monad is going to be everything. One day, it's not even going to be do, do. It's just going to be do. It's just going to be that. Just the monad. Everything is the monad anyway. I know it seems a little bizarre, but the musical language is very important in the coming age. And we're going to be able to do a lot in terms of improving the state of the personality and its relation to the soul through the scientific use of music. It's going to be an amazing thing, and we're going to wonder at our lack of understanding of the laws of vibration. Now we are at point number 47, and we're dealing with crisis. You know, around page 472 of Esoteric Astrology, we have these crises listed in addition to the crisis of Leo, individualization, crisis of choice, Libra, and the crisis of initiation, again, Capricorn. So we do have the crisis of initiation, crisis of which is expansion, and the crisis of the battlefield, I think. Crisis of initiation and expansion, well, certainly our consciousness is greatly expanding here at the 3rd degree, and we're reaching the first real initiation in the eyes of the hierarchy. When it comes to the battlefield, well, again, Mars and Moon will be fighting it out. I think there's a lot to this. It's really Mars-Vulcan, at least in the way I consider it, because it's the Moon veiling a hidden planet, and there's nothing other than Vulcan of the planets with which we are familiar. Well, that's the key, of course. Is it one of the planets with which we are familiar? But Vulcan does represent spiritual will, and Mars represents desire, and Cain, Vulcan, does kill Abel the shepherd. Well, that's the allegory. So we look at the 3rd decanate when we study Capricorn for reference to a hidden planet, and it is there. So I do believe that Vulcan is the hidden planet. The animal nature represented by Mars is really defeated, and the dweller on the threshold in the individual sense is defeated. There may be the dweller of humanity, which has to be defeated as we move towards the fourth, and in a funny kind of way, strange kind of way, when the egoic nature blends with the personality nature, it can produce another type of dweller, which is a very good dweller. It's a dweller filled with light and love and the willingness to share power in a spiritual sense. But compared to what must be done, it's still a dweller. And the jiva is still attached to it and will not relinquish the treasures of the causal body egoic lotus, thus it becomes the dweller on the threshold of still wider life. So there are further battles to be dealt with, and kind of wonder, maybe there would be some sort of planetary signature to deal with this fullness of the causal body, and yet the manner in which it must be relinquished. It's almost as if some of the heavy planets like Saturn and Pluto would be on the top, and Jupiter and Venus, representing the great causal expanse and its treasury, would stand as the dweller. It is going to be a battle for any human being that can be called rich and young in the spiritual sense. Cosmic law, most associated with this petal, the law of synthesis and attraction. Well, law of synthesis, we are entering the life of the monad, and we're seeing all things in relation. Pure reason of Buddhi helps with that, of course. The law of attraction, soul and personality are attracted, and for all practical purposes, fused. There may be some further fusion toward the fourth degree, but this really is the soul-infused personality. The law of economy is in a way superseded. We're standing on the mountaintop of matter form, but we can use matter form as an initiate would use matter form. And we do want to do so economically according to the law, maybe as we're learning techniques and particular skills in the expression of the higher things we have contacted. Then we could say that the law of economy is operative, because the techniques we might use would relate to the law of economy. But definitely the law of synthesis is coming in a new way. I mean, it's really coming in now. You know, we can have envisioned what synthesis is, but now synthesis is becoming real because the father aspect is making its impression. The monad is synthesis. You know, we have to, when we think about the monad, we have to redefine it. Monad is being. Monad is pure being. Monad is synthesis. The monad is not just conscious of pure being. We can't say that. Monad is that. So we need to come into a new language when it comes to the higher reaches of our nature. Is there a systemic law, point 49, associated most with this petal? Law of cohesion, law of magnetic control, law of fixation. Well, the law of cohesion, you know, all things are brought into unity here. The unitive power of the soul and unitive consciousness in the single eye to reveal the unity, all of these are factors at the full opening of the ninth petal. The law of magnetic control, the solar angel does control, the angel of the presence does control, and we are as if the angel of the presence. We, the monad in extension, are identified on the higher mental plane as the angel of the presence. Law of fixation, well, the soul becomes fixed in consciousness. The consciousness is polarized in the soul, fixated in the soul and as the soul. we no longer have that personality consciousness. Maybe we descend to it occasionally, but it's not where we are polarized. The law of sacrifice and death, okay, it's the third law. We do sacrifice a lot. It could be considered. I don't know about the law of vibration. We are certainly having to discriminate between the vibrations of the spiritual triad, the cosmic ethers, and the vibrations of the 18 or even 21 lower subplanes. The law of love, yes, because the quality of the soul is coming into domination. The law of sacrifice and death, it's the law of disintegration. Law of sacrifice and death is the seventh, I mentioned it. The law of disintegration, well, the knowledge petals are disintegrating, and intuition is taking its place. Barriers are disintegrating to allow us into fuller apprehension and wider livingness. All the laws, really, of the system, of course, they control much greater sources than we are, but they do make their way into our functioning, and the laws of the soul largely reflect them. So point number 50 speaks about the laws of the soul. The law of group progress, law of sacrifice, law of service, magnetic impulse, expansive response, maybe quite a few. The law of elevation is a Capricornian law. It's also called the law of group progress. It's you're in the ashram now, and we progress together. We progress together with the fellow members of the ashram, and we are all elevated together. There is this updraft, as one of my colleagues refers to it. We're being borne along, not only by the stream, but we're being elevated here as a group that is ever more identified with its true essence. And because of that identification, the identification of everyone, increasingly with the inner nature, the whole group rises. So this, we know the soul is group conscious. We now are group conscious. We are able to respond to group vibration, definitely, on the second subplane of the mental plane. So it's kind of I think it's a seventh ray law, and it has to do with group progress in the new age. Everything is faster and higher with the group when we function properly within the group. The law of sacrifice certainly continues because, look, the utter sacrifice of all forever. The law of magnetic impulse continues to be strong because we meet as souls within the ashram, deeper within the ashram after the third degree, but at least within the ashram before that point, at least on the periphery. The law of service, it must continue. Lost am I in light supernal, yet on that light I turn my back. This is the mantra of the third initiation, and of Capricorn, really. And so it represents a deep motive towards service. We descend into the valley and we continue on into Aquarius, sharing all we have in the appropriate and co-measured way. So all these laws of the soul are operative because we are becoming the soul. We really are the soul in incarnation here, especially after the third degree has been taken and all 9 petals are fully unfolded. So even here, you know, the law of repulse is operated, but we have, in a sense, regathered the repulsed personality. In order to function through it in the proper expressive way in the lower worlds. In Initiation 4, this repulsed personality, well, the final dweller on the threshold, but interestingly enough, in the glamour world problem, it discusses the dweller on the threshold even in relation to the fifth initiation. By that time, of course, the soul-infused personality is the dweller on the threshold. So it's interesting here, we're not really attracted to the personality, we repulse it in one sense, but we regather it, subduing it in light and love, and making of it an instrument, a true and faithful instrument of our soul identification. It's just like the personality ray becoming the sub-ray of the soul. We repulse Mars and the moon. And because we are increasingly subject to the spiritual triad, our power of repulsion is very strong. We have to connect with the spiritual triad in order to properly to repulse according to the law of love. Not necessarily the systemic law of love, but the law of love in a more general sense. So personality exists and it can become quite magnificent, but it's not living unto itself at all. It's living unto the higher soul center and ultimately living unto the triad, which is its higher correspondence. We were discussing that Initiation 4, we are repulsing a great deal that no longer serves, many lower elemental factors, meeting evil, really, because it's not just gone away because we have overcome it in our own nature. We are repulsing it, and at the same time serving humanity, and humanity is repulsing us. It kicks us out. That's so interesting. It ejects us. The fourth degree is a point of ejection from the human kingdom into the kingdom of souls. No ifs, ands, or buts. We just are no longer wanted by those who are totally subject to the usual energies that humanity deals with. Well, at this point of number of the third degree, we're perhaps using Mars now vigorously to repulse what is not needed, but via Vulcan, because the spiritual will of Vulcan is working through Mars. So the law of repulse is definitely active because it's such a triadal law, and we're getting more and more into the triad. It has its function, I would say, before the second degree and after the second degree, and on a higher turn of the spiral even after the third degree, when dealing with evil, as Master Jesus did, the Initiate Jesus. And the Christ continues to repulse evil, as his very straight statements, law-abiding statements made manifest. What about the law of expansive response? Well, we're about to enter the realm of the synthesis petals, and I think the law of expansive response has very much to do with those petals and with the factor of synthesis altogether. So we certainly are responding to an ever-increasing number of stimuli, and we're learning they're all aspects of the same unitive field. We are focusing in the heart center of the monad, which is the egoic lotus. So all of these laws of the soul, maybe not the law of the lower four, which is enigmatic anyway. I've tried to interpret it just a little in discussing the laws of the soul in another series of webinar commentaries. But, law of sacrifice, law of magnetic impulse or polar union, law of service, law of repulse, law of group progress or of elevation, and the law of expansive response. All of them are active here because we are now becoming, in human terms at least, a fairly high initiate. We're just babes in the woods, really, in terms of the Syrian regime, just probationary disciples, really. not even initiates of the first degree. But from the perspective of growth within the human kingdom, yes, we have achieved something, some elevation. We may be just a couple of lives away from mastership if all would work correctly. What is the astrological triangle most associated with this petal? Well, I've got a few, perhaps. I'm proposing Vulcan, Venus, and Saturn or Mercury. Why am I doing that? Well, the head center, the ajna center, the alta major center, and Mercury as the relation between them. It is that triangle in the head. From another perspective, it is Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn. Saturn, though, does belong not only at the throat center, but at the base of the skull in the alta major center, which, from another point of view, can be ruled by Pluto. You know, it's the higher base. It's the base of the skull, which is the higher correspondence to the base of the spine. Does it have 4 petals, or does it have 96 petals? It just depends on which source is speaking. So that triangle in the head is really completing, evoking the eye of Shiva. Vulcan at the head center, Venus at the ajna, but also Mercury at the ajna, and Saturn at the base of the skull for the alta major. I think it's an important one, but another triangle would be the heart, the throat, and the 7 head centers. We're not quite yet at the heart, the 7 head centers, and the 2 many-petaled lotuses. At the 4th degree and 5th degree, we would be. Maybe by the 5th degree, it's just all in the head, because it's a macrocosm for all of the other centers. Everything is contained there in a higher degree of intensity and related to the will aspect. The head contains it all. Ultimately, it all arrives at a point of synthesis which is all-containing. Regarding the senses and their extensions, the sense of sight at the ajna center is very important. We know the soul because we see the soul. The esoteric sense is also coming in. It's the 7th sense. It's the sense of intuition. The mind is being completely synthesized. The 6th sense may be found. All of the senses can be found here, of course, because even, you know, on planes higher than the higher mental plane, all of the senses are operative, or at least DK tells us a little something about them. And they all have their higher correspondences. The hearing, you know, is there in terms of spiritual telepathy, and the plan is really coming down now. Spiritual telepathy, with which of the senses should it be associated? With the esoteric sense, perhaps? Maybe. But spiritual telepathy is a sense belonging to the highest level of the higher mental plane. So whether it has a correspondence with the usual 5 senses or has to be taken in its own right, it is a sense, and I suppose because it confers intuitively that which is found above, it is part of the esoteric sense. We always have to be able to see behind the obvious, but what is the obvious keeps on changing. So the relatively subtle of an earlier period becomes the obvious of a later period, and we always have to see behind it, see behind it. And the esoteric sense is allowing us to do that. What guna is most associated with this petal number 9? Perhaps sattva. There is a relative sattva here, a marriage of the soul and the personality. We've arrived at the top of the mountain. It's a triumphant moment. We we experience joy. Hark to the joyous paean that I sound. The work is done. My ear is deaf to all the calls of earth, except to that small voice of all the little souls within the outer forms. So there is an exaltation here. We have not yet really trodden the Via Dolorosa. A moment of great joy which gives us the strength in a way. At the third we anticipate the fifth. It gives us the strength to tread this Via Dolorosa. We all have to pass through it. Someone who knows mythology must have been speaking here. That spirit or God is the jealous onlooker, wants to get intuition, to act, and to marry, both of them. It's kind of interesting. Sometimes the spirit is rejected. I know in the Kalevalan mythology here in Finland, the figure who represents the beautiful soul rejects the old man of spirit. She doesn't want to marry him. But the day must come when spirit will marry the soul-infused personality. Maybe the soul-infused personality, the union of Venus and Mercury, the union of Venus and Mars, is Vulcan, somehow considered a bit ugly, who has to marry Venus, is actually married to Venus and must stay married to Venus, regardless of the temptations of Mars. I think Venus finds Mars much more attractive at first, and the old man Vulcan not so attractive. Well, it's not tamas, no. I mean, tamas, the immutability of spirit may be likened to tamas, but we're not there yet. And rajas is active when we're a member of hierarchy. We are rajasic, no question about it. Maybe this is more, sattva sub-rajas, because the balance definitely has been achieved in this marriage of the soul and the personality, but it's not yet the marriage of the spirit with the soul become a personality. Not yet that. Yet sattva is temporarily strong. It will be a harmony that will be disrupted by the necessity to tread the Via Dolorosa and experience the crucifixion and the utter rending and tearing away from the attachments that one felt oneself triumphant over, but maybe one was not totally triumphant, One had to be put to the test. So if all there was in terms of triumph was to stand on the mountaintop in transfigured glory, well, that's it, right? But there's more to it, and we have to be truly tested whether our detachment from all of the pain-causing worlds is complete. Those worlds of pain, as the Buddha would see them. Which of the three advanced themes for meditation is most associated with this petal? Well, isolated unity and inclusive reason in one respect. Well, maybe all of them. Depends on your ray. Isolated unity, the second dose of it, the intensification of it, comes at mastership, but we have isolated a kind of unity here. We do see the unity. And as a master, there's the full realization, and we are the unity. We may have intimations here at the third degree of what it means to be the unity, but it's more a question of seeing the unity and becoming the being that is the unity. That is reserved for later. But still there are intimations, and we can work on it. Maybe inclusive reason is the key here. We all, somehow see how it's all related. It's an initiation that has a lot to do with vision, and in that respect, Sagittarius, the sign of vision, can be connected closely with the work in this petal. But somehow we intuitively, well, through very sharp reasoning, but then increasingly intuitively, see the relationships of all things to each other. Now that naturally will help. It will help if we are on the second ray, but it doesn't have to be only that ray, because we do receive the qualities of the other rays, regardless of what ray we are on. All rays eventually, as we're reaching the mountaintop and higher mountaintops, supplement each other and reinforce each other. So there is really the sense of looking in every direction and seeing the unity. And inclusive reason helps us do that, but to be the one that is the unity. Now that is another step. Maybe the first ray souls can get a sense of this, but I think it's the master that knows that. Regarding presented attributes, well, we're a good manifester of the divine plan, which we now understand much more fully. I bring from the mountain or to the mountain something to manifest. I'm a world disciple, we can say there, at the third degree, and a good manifester of the plan. We know the techniques of manifestation. We bring something to the mountain. Is it to or from? From to. All right. And this, when you look at isolated unity, inclusive reason, presented attributes, this third initiation is the initiation at which these themes really have their true initial utility. We can talk about those things, but they are advanced themes, and they are applied when soul fusion is real. And it's not real until this point. So, if we try to meditate as a personality using themes like isolated unity and inclusive reason and even presented attributes, maybe a little closer there, we're not going to succeed. We have to meditate as one who is becoming the soul, or who is recognizing himself as the detached consciousness, free from the contents of that consciousness. Franklin Merrill Wolff talked about the philosophy of consciousness without an object. Well, consciousness is filled with objects in a way, and our task is to detach what consciousness is from the objects that it perceives, and it's a very subtle task. Right. The greater constellation here, or planet, well, I think we've somewhat gone into that. We have discussed that. Certainly, well, the Sirius is very important. Little Bear is very important. Great Bear is very important. Pleiades are important, especially in their Buddhic quality. Yeah, we've discussed that. Chelaszip, well, as we approach the fulfillment of this petal, we are the Chela on the thread, and we can call on energy from the Master, and it happens quickly without a great expenditure of force from him. But after we've taken this degree, after the ninth petal is fully open, we can become the Chela within the aura. And the books that we are reading from, not so much the books of living form, certainly the book of wisdom, because those who have their consciousness focused within the soul have the wisdom of the soul. And we're just getting an intimation via the triad, through the Antikarana, and via the approach of the Father aspect of what it is to read from the book of life, which in a way, maybe what can I call it? I can call it the book of being. The will to be is becoming stronger here. Maybe it depends on the ray, but in general, once passing the third degree, one realizes that the egoic lotus is a limitation and a veil upon pure being, which is our essence. We can't really read from this book yet. Following the wisdom, we can begin to open the book, and that's what we attempt to do. Okay, we have reached the point where we can look at number 58. These are this is the expansion of the Aclery process, alignment, crisis, light, revelation, integration. I've included some other stages earlier and also later. I've included the repulse, fusion, identification, initiation. Initiation, the technique of duality, and identification. Which are the ones which are relevant to Petal 9? Well, certainly soul fusion, infusion is relevant. We have pretty much the 75% soul-infused personality by the time we come to the third initiation. It's almost consummated. And real integration of the soul's energy system with the personality's energy system is consummated here. Maybe initiation 4 would take both fusion and integration a bit further, but it only lasts a short time. Once the third initiation is taken, well, the fourth can follow in the same life or certainly in the next. It would not be at all unusual. DK even says it can follow in the same life. So this is the point at which the mind, the emotions, and the body are truly pervaded by soul energy. And the two energy systems are coordinated. Now in Esoteric Psychology Volume 2, we see some very important tabulations. Let's see if we can go to that. It's right around here, let's just say about 393 or so. See if I can find the places. Maybe a little bit earlier, perhaps, where we're told, how the connection works, starting from the monad. Here it is. Here's the channel. The channel number 4. This works out through, let's just say, the second ray type, from the monad to the love petals of the egoic lotus, from the love petals to the astral vehicle, energizing all astral matter found in the equipment of the phenomenal man. The spirit moves upon the face of the waters, from thence to the solar plexus center, from that center then rising again to the heart center, the needed duality connected with the astral body thus appears. And we have also here the correspondence to the descent of the fire of the will to the base of the spine, with its subsequent rising along the spinal column to the head. So that was for the second ray type. Let's see if we can find the same here, possibly. I'll do my best. Here we have the illumination that is produced, a second ray result in the first ray type, and it all begins with the level of Atma, or that center of spiritual will which is dynamic and effective but seldom called into play, to the will petals of the egoic lotus, upon which I touched in the Treatise on Cosmic Fire. These petals are the reflection in the soul of this particular aspect of energy. So the will petals do reflect Atma, and obviously the love petals Buddhi, and the knowledge petals Manas. And from this layer of petals to the mind-body, from the mind-body to the brain, and from the brain in due and set time to the center at the base of the spine, arousing the Kundalini fire, apparently rising again to the head center. All right, we've seen how it works for the second ray type, which produces imagination, and for the third ray type it produces inspiration. And here is the channel. It's always in a slightly different number, but from the will aspect of the monadic life to the level of consciousness and of energy which we call the higher mind. from the higher mind to the knowledge petals of the egoic lotus, from these vortices of force to the lower or concrete mind, that in which the average intelligent man familiarly works, to the throat center, and thence immediately to the sacral center, the center of physical plane creation or reproduction, and from there it is raised again. Always it is raised again in these descents of energy, largely from the monad, and even when it seems to start from Atma, I'll bet it starts from an aspect of the monad. From there it is raised again to the throat center, where the creative physical urge is transmuted into artistic or literary creation in some form or another, and later still into the power to create groups or organizations which will express some idea or some thought which emanates from the mind of God and which demands immediate precipitation on earth. So this produces inspiration. It is for third-ray souls. The technique for second-ray souls produces imagination. Always that which is produced is related to a different ray. Imagination being connected, we are told, with the third ray, and inspiration with the first ray. And here is the result for the first ray soul producing a second ray result, which is illumination. So these are three very important transmissions of energy. And these are the transmissions of energy which result eventually in the fusion of soul and personality using the advanced integration techniques: isolated unity for the first ray, inclusive reason for the second ray, and presented attributes for the third ray. It's interesting, this sort of a circulatory technique, this ring around of a rosy sort of technique, where the first ray method produces a second ray result, the second ray method produces a third ray result, the third ray method produces a first ray result. So fusion definitely occurs in relation to this ninth petal, and we can use those advanced techniques most definitely. The zodiacal lights are interesting. It depends on, this is point 59, it depends on which sign of the zodiac we choose. I mean, if it were Aries, it would be the light of life itself. If we go here to esoteric astrology, and let's just say about page 330 or so. Oh, that's 339. That's not what we want. 330. We have the different lights. Even Sagittarius would be, let's say, a beam of directed focus light. Sagittarius is one of those signs which is strongly related to the ninth petal, being the ninth sign. It is this point of light. In this point of light, the point of light becomes a beam, revealing a greater light ahead and illumining the way to the center of that light. So it illuminates the way into the intuition from the experiences of the ninth petal. And the light of life itself, well, that relates to Aries. This is a dim point of light found at the center of the cycle of manifestation, faint and flickering. It is the searchlight of the Logos, seeking that which can be used for divine expression. I think this can be microcosmically implied, but it obviously has a cosmic significance. Suppose we were to begin with, we were to look at the other fire sign, which we arrive at by beginning with the first petal at Pisces and going clockwise, the light of the soul, Leo. A reflected point of light, logoic or divine. The light diffused in Cancer focuses and reveals eventually a point. Well, certainly the light of the soul in the Transfiguration is blazing forth. So this brings us, of course, also to the process of initiation. Full integration, or just about full integration, just about full fusion, And all of that amounts to basically initiation. So these three go together. And later, when we get into the synthesis petals, the duality and identification will be strongly in evidence. So the zodiacal lights, the light of life itself, and also the Sagittarian light, which is called at least a beam of directed focus light. I'll write that down here. So this is from Aries, the light of life itself, and then a beam of directed focused light, and the key there is Sagittarius. The keynote from the angle of form, let form again be sought, but I'm not sure it's so relevant, because by the time we reach the unfoldment of this petal, we are far beyond merely the seeking of form. Perhaps in a very deliberate way, we will seek form to express our conscious understanding of the divine purpose. I come forth from the angle of the soul, I come forth, and from the plane of mind I rule. This is connected with the sign Aries. And one is really ruling from the realm of the egoic lotus, from the higher mind. Certainly by that time, when we're almost at the third degree or in the third degree, we are capable of focusing at will within the higher mind. We understand something of the divine plan, and we come forth from that particular level and work in the lower three worlds with a conscious plan in mind. That plan reflecting as much of the purpose as we can possibly reflect, because we have been touched by the Father aspect. Now we come to the yogic considerations, the five organs of action: voice, hands, feet, the excretory organs, and the organs of generation. I think the organs of generation and the excretory organs maybe are not so important here. The voice is certainly important, because this is a petal of great creativity where one can enunciate the plan from the perspective of higher mind. And maybe the voice is the most important here. The hands and feet often will be those who follow the indications of the voice. This doesn't mean that the person is completely impractical and does not, go on hierarchical errands with the feet and undertake hierarchical tasks with the hands, of course. But it is the formulation of higher thought, intuition, higher manas, and concrete formulation through the voice. These are what are important. The five organs of receptivity: the ear, the skin, so the ear is hearing, the skin is touch, the eye is sight, tongue is taste, nostrils are smell. I think we are using all of them. The eye, I think, is very important here, and the opening of the third eye into a functional activity. We also begin to understand more of what buddhi really is, and so the tongue representing taste is important, and the skin representing the sense of touch, not in an astral sense, but in a Buddhic sense. Can we begin to, so to speak, smell our way home, this high idealism that will return us into the realm of the monad, the higher correspondence of the nostrils, perhaps. Certainly the key sense here is spiritual telepathy, and that has to come via the Antakarana and from the spiritual triad, where the plan is known and the plan is impressed upon the consciousness. I'm not saying much about the alchemical journey, because I really haven't made sufficient research. I have friends who are deeply into it, and I think could do a better job than I could, but certainly we are at that point where the gold is appearing. The base metal of the personality, which is Saturnian in a way, the iron of Mars, the lead of Saturn, they have been transmuted into the gold of the soul. The gold is the most real thing at this point, the sun-like golden quality of the soul. And so we have reached that kind of value at this point. We are no longer dealing in a desirous way with things of lesser value. We certainly have reached a middle point where the sun is shining, the understanding of soul values is upon us. We are living according to those soul values, according to soul laws. There has been the transmutation into gold. Beyond that, I don't know what transmutation to expect. Perhaps the diamond is the very highest object of transmutation and to become the diamond soul, but we are not there yet. Here are the picture of some of the tarot cards. Let's see, trying to make them a little bit bigger. And the Sagittarius card has to do with temperance, and that is found here, you know, a reasonable balance between soul and personality, no longer emotionally upset, no longer mentally deluded. This card will have something to do with it. Maybe the Emperor for Aries as well. The spirit is the Emperor, and we are contacting it consciously for the first time. The Hierophant is also very important, the light giver, the illuminator, the greatest light seen in Taurus. Every one of the signs of the zodiac that we've discussed has its own card and its own type of application here. But I think it is probably not too profitable to go card by card and try to figure this out. The devil, interestingly, is card number, what is it here? It is, I suppose, card number 15, I suspect. But, of course, it is the Capricorn card, and it just does not give us the higher view of the Capricornian liberation whatsoever. It is more like the inverted mountain, and the so-called infernal hierarchies are brought forward here. That's not what we're seeking. The other, yeah, and there's not a good representation of Capricorn. There is a good representation of Aquarius as the star, and perhaps the Last Judgment as Pisces, if it's not the world. I quite forget on that, you know, which one represents the Pisces card, but both of them, let's just say that the Last Judgment certainly ties in with the Christian understanding of the human and divine process. So we will have to interpret that in a higher way. Meanwhile, the moon is there, representing the 18 lower subplanes, and the sun appearing as the causal body in the 19th subplane. And the new babe in the new kingdom is riding the white horse of the purified personality. There's so many different ways of interpreting this. Perhaps those who are more on the 7th and 3rd ray would find this synthesis of wisdom from the previous solar system more congenial. The mental chakras, certainly we are dealing with the petals of will for the mental plane, and the mental chakras will all be activated, but the petals themselves serve as chakras at this point. And these petals have a influential power in the life of the personality. And so we can expect that since we have the full unfoldment of the nine petals, that whatever potencies these different petals represent, sometimes, DK says, well, this particular energy comes from the second will petal, or, that kind of thing. Third will petal, first will petal. This comes from the fifth petal of the egoic lotus, that kind of thing. So whatever potencies are contained in the petals and which influence and direct the personality, they are all available fully at this time. I talk so much in terms of the full unfoldment of the ninth petal, but it seems to take such a short time. So the process of really attending to the work of the ninth petal and the stage at which it is fully unfolded may not be separated by much time at all, because this can be the ninth petal, the second and third initiation can be taken in the same life, and often is, even probably will be, says the Tibetan in Initiation, Human and Solar. He tells us the probability is high. Initiation, Human and Solar 84 and 85, a kind of a shocking statement, really. The Eightfold Path, well, certainly, the Buddha was surrounded by arhats, but also probably by others who were moving towards the arhat initiation, and also by, I suppose, initiates of the third degree. These are all practiced by those of high development. Their view, their understanding is cleared of illusion or rapidly clearing. Their will is connected with the higher will, not only the will of the soul, but the spiritual will. Their speech reflects the plan and not personal motive. Their action is co-measured and correct for circumstances. Their livelihood is not anything that would prevent the establishment of soul, light, love, and power upon the earth. They are not working to serve desire in the lower world. They're working to serve soul impulse as it expresses in the lower world. They apply their will to use their energies properly. I think when I look at right effort, what it means to me is the right use of whatever energy may be available. They may be having memory that recalls where they have been and see something of their developmental process. I think as the Buddha was taking the sixth initiation, which is in a way the higher correspondence to the third, he had this complete recall of everything he had done as a human being and that which he participated in before entering the human kingdom, which certainly, would have been in a previous solar system altogether. That has to be understood when it talks about him being a tiger. Well, if he was a moon chain being individualized there, or more likely individualized in the previous solar system, he was certainly not the kind of tiger that we understand. Right concentration. Well, I think it's a question of values and of eliminating, using the mind only for that which is truly purposeful. It would be interesting to see the other words used to describe the Noble Eightfold Path. Certainly, by this time, he has really understood the Four Noble Truths and is focused in the soul and detached from personal values. He knows all these things, that suffering does exist, that it arises from attachment to desires, but for him the moon has fallen, and he is not attached to the desires which lead into the lower planes. He has detached, he has ceased his desire for the lower worlds, and then he begins to practice the Noble Eightfold Path. With respect to the means of yoga, the first two are what we're looking at, but Okay, yama, the 5 commandments, and niyama, the restraints for the 5 rules. So let's look here at yama. Finally, because he is realizing himself to be everywhere. Harmlessness is the life expression of the man who realizes himself to be everywhere, who lives consciously as a soul, whose nature is love, whose method is inclusiveness, and for whom all forms are alike in that they veil and hide the light. Well, finally he can practice this, real harmlessness, because he is overcoming illusion, or has at least overcome that particular type of illusion which is found in the average man. He will tell the truth. That's where Sagittarius comes in, the great sign of truth, since he desires nothing in the lower world, being a 3rd degree initiate. He will not compromise the truth because of the effect it might have on acquiring the things of the world. He knows that anything that comes into his causal body, or any accumulation that he makes, will be the result of his own work, and so he need not steal anything from others or pretend that what another has produced is his own. He realizes his energy does not go out towards the lower worlds because he doesn't want them anymore. Therefore, he is continent, and he is not greedy or avaricious because he knows in good time all things will come to him because he is all things. These understandings are there for the man who is taking the 3rd initiation. With regard to the restraints, or niyama, the purification must forever continue because it's a quality of Shambhala, actually. So purification, destruction, and organization. So we can't say, aha, now we're purified. No. We must become a flame in the sea of fire, which is Shambhala, and therefore, in order to be restored to that flame-like state as a volatile essence, all manner of purification must continue. Contentment, he is so much of pure being that what he has is not of great importance. What he is greater than what he has. Usually people are discontent on the basis of what they have acquired or what their circumstances offer them in terms of opportunity, but he realizes through identification with a being that he is the very source of all things that might possibly come to him. Well, I'll never say that fiery aspiration can be discontinued, because Master Morya, solidly in Shambhala, always reminds us to strive fierily, and that aspiration, says DK, is not just an emotional attitude, but is a method of ascent. So he gives it a much more scientific basis. Spiritual reading, it continues. A deep understanding of everything as symbolic, and having entered the world of the higher mind, the symbolism is ever clearer. Spiritual discernment is available to the man, and he can see the spirit behind all forms, and he can see the archetype from which all forms have come, and devotion to Ishvara. Well, who is it? Maybe the planetary logos. These are nijama. Here, one place it says niyama, another nijama. The J and the Y sometimes are interposed, transposed. So the attention to the commandments is very successful here, and the attention to the restraints is very successful. He certainly is devoted to the flame within him, which is basically the monad, and is the planetary logos, and is the solar logos, and on and on and on. It is being itself. So it is the being as the very essence of the universe, and as the first aspect impacts him, he has this kind of devotion. He will hold his attitude correct according to the plan. That's asana. The energies are circulating well within his nature, and that's pranayama. It's not just breathing exercises, right? He is in a state of abstraction. He has withdrawn from identification with the lower worlds. That's pratyahara. He is in a state of concentration and meditation, increasingly so, and most of the time. Obviously, if a planetary logos can meditate to create his vehicle of manifestation, meditation doesn't end at some time in the life process of a human being. Has he achieved the full samadhi? Maybe not yet. That is more synthesis of the monad, the atmic consciousness, nirvana, with the atmic plane being the nirvanic plane. No, he hasn't achieved that yet. But he has achieved what many books call the satori, or the enlightenment, or the illumination. And that is a lesser form of samadhi. He knows the unity of things, and he is being impressed by the oneness of things. I am the life, I God. I am the one, I God. This is pronounced understandingly by him at the time of the third degree. So we are told in the ancient Atlantean chant. So I think we can see that these means of yoga are alive and well and active and manifesting to a great extent in the one who is working in petal number 9, and especially the one who has completely unfolded it along with all the other 9 petals. And, we're getting closer and closer to the source of the Beatitudes. Whatever I said in regard to petal number 8 is even more so. Here, the poor in spirit, he really is so rich in spirit, he doesn't want the other things. He is poor in the outer sense of accumulation, or at least he doesn't care about it, because he is rich in spirit. Now, some of the masters have had amazing wealth, or could generate it, but they're so detached from it, they use it only for the good. Does he mourn anymore? Well, maybe more the 8th petal. But then there is a mourning, perhaps, for leaving behind the identity he thought he had, and the higher identification will comfort him. He is increasingly meek or trained, and the masters certainly are the inner government of the earth. They have, in a way, inherited the earth. He thirsts after the higher worlds and is entering them, and is experiencing the compensation or fulfillment. He has not attachment to lower things. He is not competing with others. The attitude of competition is gone, and cooperation has taken its place. He is the merciful one now, because he simply does not want to does not want to benefit from another human being, does not want to compromise another human being so he can benefit from the wealth or knowledge or vitality or whatever of another human being. He is pure in his heart because he lives in the heart center of the monad. And God is certainly seen from the higher mental plane, and increasingly so as we rise through the planes. Because he is influenced by Buddhi strongly at this point, preparing to focus on the Buddhic plane of the 4th initiation, he is a peacemaker. Peace comes from the Buddhic plane and from the spirit of peace in Shambhala. It's a second-ray being, we gather. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, and ahead of him lies the persecution. I must say that will be the case, because the Via Dolorosa must be trodden. Nobody can escape that, whether in a more concrete form in the West, or whether one goes into a cave and relinquishes everything in the East. Any kind of attachment through which grief could come must be broken. So, the inner persecutions, the outer persecutions, they do exist. Will one be attacked by the counterforce interiorly? It's quite possible that's a form of persecution. Will one be attacked outwardly by the members of the 4th kingdom, ejecting the human unit as he practices the disciplines of the 5th kingdom, yes, he will be ejected, and persecution is a means of ejection. I mean, you think about Jesus going through the crucifixion, and the statement of ejection by the people was, "Give us Barabbas," or Barabbas, whatever, Barabbas perhaps. They wanted the criminal, the liar, the one, the miscreant. They did not want the one who was the Son of the Son, the Son of God. They ejected him. He was cast out. He was despised and rejected. I'm thinking about the lines from the Messiah by Handel, based on the Scripture. This is something that all of us go through. Impossible that the persecution will not be experienced. It definitely has to be experienced. Well, these are the Beatitudes, and as we can see, as we rise through the planes, we know more and more of the truth of them. And once we take the fourth degree, well, the Beatitudes simply will be the description of our life. And when we have anchored ourselves as a master on the atmic plane, we can say, "This I have been through, and this I know." These are statements from the Light of the Soul, and you can read through this, but I think we've made the necessary correlations. We've discussed the three advanced themes of meditation earlier. When it comes to the 15 counsels, they're all about purification mainly. And every one of them has been practiced and mastered. Proper thought form building, purification of the aura, the elimination of selfishness, idleness, selfishness, and cruelty or hate. All of that has been accomplished. I would say, speak not of self. Thoughts of self and of thy lower destiny prevent the inner voice of thine own soul from striking upon thine ear. Speak of the soul, enlarge upon the plan. Thus will the world of form be offset, the rules of the world of form, slightly paraphrasing, and thus the law of love will enter upon the world. And we're certainly in the love. We are focused in that second ray, fifth ray vehicle, which is an expression of the second aspect of divinity. We are at will within the field of love. The 15 rules of magic, well, here is where we really can become the white magician. When the inner eye is becoming functional and purification is such and discipline is such that we can take the third degree, then I must say that every one of the rules of magic can be profitably imparted to us, and we become a divine creator with the plan. We see the plan at first hand. We see it for ourselves, especially once the third degree has been taken. And we can, we have the inner eye to see the beings that have to be manipulated. So until this point, we are simply aspirants to white magic. We may be involved in a creative process which dimly reflects the white magical process, and we may contribute good things to the world using more normal human means. But now we can be trusted with the words of power, the words of protection. We understand the Four Noble Truths. We are not desirous of things in the lower world. We are detached from lower desire. We have brought into our consciousness yet another divine aspect, the aspect of being. We are aligned with the divine will. So we could study then every one of the 15 rules for white magic and say every one of these has relevance to us. We can see the things that are going on in the inner worlds, and we can perform the acts which are required of the white magician. I mean, maybe the Master can do this in fuller measure. Okay, no doubt about that. But at least we can be trusted, we are sensitive, we are effective. The third eye is opening, the single eye, and without that single eye, one just cannot fulfill these rules. So, okay, I won't go through every rule in white magic. That's a huge study in itself, but suffice it to say that by the time we reach this point, we can do this kind of work. And that's why, in a way, the seventh ray is very important here, because we really can contribute to the manifestation of the plan through magical means. We meet the Hierophant. He is Sanat Kumara. He is Uranus. Uranus is the seventh ray and the magical planet. So we can use this Uranian quality of energy to manifest that which the plan needs to see manifest, and we can use magical means to do it. The archangels, I'll leave it be, have been leaving it be, but the fixed signs are involved there, especially Uriel, Raphael, or Uriel, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. And I think because of our increased sensitivity through the third eye, we can come in touch more and more with these Devic forces. The Devic forces and the human forces meet cooperatively on the Buddhic plane, and we are already moving towards Buddhi as we are taking the third degree. We've had a number of strokes of the intuition, which has helped us banish illusion. Remember, it is the intuition which dispels illusion, and it's the clear beam of focused mental light which dissipates glamour. When we come to the tree of life, the Kabbalah, we are living in soul light. We are focused within the soul. The quality of love and mercy is strong. Bina and of understanding, and Chokhmah of wisdom, these are also increasingly our possessions. Whether Kether is Neptune or Uranus, we are not quite crowned in all glory as we would be at the fifth initiation, but we are effective in bringing through magically our various qualities down to Malkuth, the earth. The word foundation under Yesod can be very etheric, I feel. The moon is connected with that. I mean, we're told that the etheric devas have the moon on their crescent, a crescent moon on their forehead. These are the violet devas. It is the foundation, in a way, of the manifesting outer kingdom of Malkuth, which is the earth. So there is a sense in which we begin to understand the highest and the lowest meeting. We don't have the full connection between Kether, crown, and Malkuth, earth. That would be, in a sense, the base of the spine, connected with the highest head center, but that process is starting. It is a complicated process, and there are various paths where we have to master certain tasks and demonstrate that we can move from one stage of relative mastery to the next until we reach the crown. It's a bit like Corona Borealis in Libra. We have to be crowned, but the crowning takes place in sight of Shambhala, and even though we can say in a relative sense that Shambhala is consummated in the third degree initiate, this is said in the rays and initiations, the consummation is certainly not complete. Okay, celestial orders, I'm tempted, but as there are so many more angels than there are human beings, the complexity would be overwhelming and probably not necessary for us at this point, because we are not, we have enough to do to learn what the creative hierarchies are and how they can be contacted, and really one creative hierarchy, or two especially, the Makara hierarchy, and the hierarchy of triads. These are the ones that we really have to know something about. The orders continue on all the subplanes of the cosmic plane, and they continue to rise, and who knows fully what they are, because beyond the cosmic physical plane are many other Devic possibilities. You know, if there are Devas on the cosmic mental plane, for instance, solar angels of an immense kind providing the underpinning of the Egoic Lotus with the solar logos, then there are all kinds of Devas on these higher levels. So even our knowledge of celestial orders has to be relatively, at this time, medieval and contained. Well, we've talked so much about the 12 signs of the zodiac, we don't need to talk about the tribes of Israel. It's a specialized study. I do thank my colleague for putting in some of these extra categories, which have surely made me feel ignorant, but that's fine. I can only talk about what I can talk about. Otherwise, it will take a specialized study. So now, we're winding up our study of the ninth petal, and all of us, members of the different classes, threw in some different synthetic thoughts, sort of a catch-all, relating to the nature of this petal and the tasks which are mastered and the abilities which belong to the person when these tasks have been mastered. So this is the last item, item number 80, and then we will be complete as far as we can be at the moment with the synthesis for the ninth petal, at which time we will take up some discussion of the petals of synthesis, and I will attempt to do what maybe is not easy to do, but to talk about how all the different energies might contribute to the synthesis, which is largely pursued during the period from the third to the fourth initiation. I mean, there is some reflexive unfoldment, and synthesis is achieved to a degree as the three initiations are taken, but a very conscious application to develop the understanding of synthesis, the participation in synthesis. This is occurring between the third and the fourth degree. Now, you know, we're not there yet, and at least most of us are not there yet. I would say, you know, very unlikely. So it will be, to a degree, speculative. We're not the Dalai Lama, we're not the initiate Jesus, we're not Thomas More, and I'm not, you know, what can we say of the status of Mother Teresa? It's really hard, you know, on the sixth ray, but there are great souls, and moving into this realm of synthesis. And by their fruits ye shall know them is probably the best way to determine at what level an individual is truly working. So we'll get into this petal in just a moment, or rather, into the synthesis in just a moment. The synthesis for petal number 9, the miscellaneous statements gathered at the end. So let us look at a few of these thoughts. Well, you know, for most of us who are studying this, the real full development of petal number 9, it does loom on ahead. This was the case for the great majority of the disciples that DK took into training. There are third initiation types in the world, certainly, you know, Mandala, Bishop Tutu, the Dalai Lama seems more around the period of the fourth initiation. Maybe Mother Teresa is of the third degree. There are types, and we can recognize them by their great expansive service in the world. There are some also silent servers that we may know nothing about, simply coming to the fore, achieving a degree of popularity in the sight of men does not necessarily indicate the degree. There are those who may be silently behind the scenes, as Master Morya talks about the yogi in the cave who is, in a sense, everywhere and serving everywhere. Personality as a magnificent instrument is really reaching its apotheosis, but the ray of the personality has become a ray of the soul. I mentioned Thomas More as the man for all seasons. He was an Aquarian, I think Sagittarius rising. He had Moon in Aries. He lost his head, you know, to Henry the Eighth when Thomas More insisted on curbing Henry's appetites and upholding the primacy of the Catholic Church. That was his task. Goethe is another the great poet of Germany. Sometimes you look at, well, I don't know, was Wagner one? I'm not sure. There were certain aspects of his character which didn't seem to fit, but Bach, yes, I would say. Goethe had said that the only true joys are the joys of personality, meaning the joys of full individuality. So I would think he was speaking of the richness of his own causal body. These days, the third degree initiates are known as world disciples. But at the fourth degree, well, you know, there's more sacrifice of acknowledgement. Fourth degree types may not be known. I'm thinking also of Albert Schweitzer as a great third degree type. When it comes to Francis Bacon, more on the fourth degree level. I mean, these are speculations, of course, you know. One cannot know this with certainty, but by their fruits ye shall know them. And this is one way to speculate intelligently. Carl Jung, I would say, quite possibly yes, as one who had unfolded these petals. But Freud, I would say no. It's just a different. We do know of Roberto Assagioli. He was considered an initiate disciple. He was, in a way, a friend of Jung and Freud. And that means that the full unfoldment of the nine was there. Well, more Bach than Handel. Of course, these are my own estimations. But let us just say that the emerging third degree initiates, those who have unfolded the nine petals, are really world disciples, and they will make a difference. Whether that difference will be immediately understood or even noticed by people, whether these disciples themselves will be noticed, it's hard to say. One can contribute a great deal to the world and still not be noticed by the world. So prominence is not necessarily the key to attainment, or does not necessarily reveal attainment. In this petal, we're rising to the feet of the solar angel. We are preparing, as it were, to get our wings. The Ba and the Ka are involved here. We are given wings once we achieve the fourth degree, just as the solar angel has. But we have a certain degree of elevation and the ability to rise above and not be trapped by the lower worlds when this petal has completed its work. We could say that we, the monad in extension, and the solar angel are now in conscious consultation with each other about the state of the personality, and I would say that a person at this stage, an individual at this stage, has a lot to say about the type of incarnations which are coming next. Will divine vision begin to appear? I think so. It's from the fifth level of the Buddhic plane, and there is a correlation, a numerological correlation there. So a clearer vision, divine vision and Sagittarius can be related. The fifth ray, the third ray, and the fifth sub-level of the Buddhic plane. This would connect, well, healing is available too, I would say, and the healing is probably even available in the eighth petal. The word astounded is there because of the astonishment that the third degree initiate experiences when viewing the passage of the energies. TK talks about this, how all the interplay of the energies opens up before the astonished or astounded vision of the third degree initiate. The Martian energies have been, for practical purposes, conquered. They can be used because one sometimes needs to be a strong individual in the world, and Mars will always help with that. The sacrifice petals. Now, why am I saying, they do unfold compared to the other petals more rapidly, but the first and the second far more slowly than the third sacrifice petal, the ninth petal that we're talking about. But for those, I know what I'm talking about here now, those on the path of evolution who choose not to tread the path of initiation, for them, these sacrifice petals will unfold much more slowly because they are not subject to the curious and abnormal process of initiation, nor are they subject to abnormal and strenuous efforts to which a man compels himself, seeking more rapid usefulness. So the power of choice is ours here, and those of us who are talking about these things, of course, somehow, despite the fears and the terrors and all that which may confront a person, we have chosen this path of initiation. So, some interesting ideas are coming here about the methods of expiating karma and learning how to become the karmic chemist, so to speak. We, in the Stymphalian birds, we certainly, under Sagittarius, we certainly experience the discord we have generated, but it's all part of the task of getting rid of illusion. Thinking about suffering, no one really likes it, but when we have a different state of identification, the degree to which we identify with the pain of the lower vehicles and of the psyche is modulated. The degree of identification is curtailed. We have the natural bent, not to want to suffer. It's an agonizing, rending state, and it seems to slow one down. It seems to delay. The spirit wants to be free, as it is essentially free, and does not want to be involved in the rending process. But of course, it turns out that the rending process liberates us more rapidly than if we had not gone through it. Maybe that's why the fourth-ray types can make such rapid progress, because of all the tearing and the rending, or can become the ne'er-do-well and not succeed at all. But the path of pain is a fast path, and in these sacrifice petals, because we have chosen strenuous and abnormal effort, we experience the path of pain more intensely than those that are just slowly rising with the rest of humanity and not making the individual effort. I suppose the fear factor does enter in here. We're talking about, what does he say, it's a fearful conflict before the third initiation is taken. And maybe people are too afraid, some, to pass through it. But I suppose, desperation gets the better of them, and just nausea, with continued identification with things as they are, and so they do press forward into their fears. I think it's better to be fearful than guilty. Guilt occurs when we just don't move forward. Fear occurs when we do move forward, but at least we go through it. So love is greatly increasing in this petal because it is the second aspect with which we're identifying increasingly. Lots of Venus there at this initiation, a great planet of love wisdom. But Buddhi is coming, and Buddhi says, let me love without reservation. And the reservation can be provided to a degree even by the causal body itself, by the structure on the higher mental plane. So Buddhic love is compared to the love of the soul, love without reservation. Let's just say that much of the time equation is in our hands here, and the degree to which we are willing to press forward and compel ourselves to do what most would not want to do will be the degree, determine the speed of our liberation. Fear, we have been told, is the great dweller on the threshold, and the fearful conflict is presented. We kind of begin to lose the identity that we have been so attached to, and then we say, well, what am I after all? It's as if I've lost my real self. Well, in fact, we're losing our unreal self. DK had said to his group that I wish you were all younger and more courageous. Well, younger would give the energy to do these kinds of things and courage the will to go forward at whatever expense. This is a petal of glory, and the glory comes because the utter sacrifice of all forever has been at least attempted. Well, you know, as we go on, there's more and more sacrifice. We could not compare the kind of sacrifice we would have excuse me, at this ninth petal compared with the Christ sacrifice in the Garden of Gethsemane at his sixth initiation. Another little these are jokes now, you know. Different medicines you can take at different points in your progress. Give it all, you know. This is a good medicine to take at this petal. It'll help you with the utter sacrifice of all forever. Absorbitol. Is that the cure for accumulitis? You know, there's a problem with the third and second ray sometimes. They love to accumulate, and absorbitol can become a kind of a fixation. Maybe you don't want to overdose on absorbitol. There's also, I don't know, we must have been having a good time here, refusitol. This is a first-ray medicine, and it's for those people who choose the neti-neti path, not this, not that. You take refusitol, and nothing looks good until you find pure being itself. And then maybe a medicine that we generate within our own brain called confusitol. I'm kind of amused by these words. Every once in a while in a class you have to have moments of comic relief. Maybe we've been too attentive, too focused, too much in deadly earnest, and we have to have a little bit of humor to help us re-grasp the situation in a new and higher way. So, as the Tibetan has been saying, you know, at the second degree, the word express counts. We do express the monad through the soul, maybe not the full monad, but the monad's intention through the soul. At the point of revelation at the third degree, we are capable of revealing the monad through the soul. The soul is not gone, the egoic lotus is not gone, so there cannot be pure revelation of the monad, because the soul is still very much the vehicle with which we are identified or in which we find our focus, but monad through the soul, expressing at the second degree and revealing at the third. And something of the monad does get expressed, and something of the monad does get revealed. From a certain point, this is really a petal of accomplishment. We might say, well, look, you know, it's all over here. There is achievement. We have confidence in ourselves. We are potent. The potency of the sun is ours. We have spiritual solidity. We stand on the ground or on the mountain. The mountain is underfoot. Most of the personal karma connected with the human race is over, and the power of expansion conferred by initiation is ours. You know, aspiring towards this under Sagittarius or actually achieving it in Capricorn. We have a real relationship to the hierarchy because in a way we are included within hierarchy. We've achieved greater ashramic intimacy. We've achieved that stage of Chela in the aura, having taken the third degree. Venus is the mind of Christ, and Venus is the major planet here at the third degree, and we are possessed of the mind that is in Christ. And suddenly, this great fanatic, St. Paul, begins to talk about love. How is this? You know, did the transition from a sixth-ray soul to a second-ray soul occur? Had he entered the realm of the causal vehicle, and could he actually enter into the Buddhic aspect as it was pouring into the causal vehicle? Venus is very powerful here. So Venus came over him, and so did Vulcan come over him, as he talks about the priests of the order of Melchizedek, the first ray Melchizedek and his priests, who are the masters of the wisdom. Okay, so we go on to another series of miscellaneous comments. This is, I think I've said this before, but it is an initiation when the magician appears. To be a magician, you have to be totally soul-infused. Maybe not all are magicians, but we can become the white magician after this initiation, especially due to the opening of the third eye and our great capacity to know what it is the soul thinks and then bring that through, because we are the soul, and we are contemplating. We are deep in contemplation. We are merging with the soul in contemplation. So our thought is the soul's thought, and we are determined to bring it through by increasingly magical and psychic methods. And higher psychism is coming to us in the development of this petal. Well, the major slog in the human kingdom is over, and we move perhaps into a new field for the petals. All the hard-won abilities. Hard-won, well, it could be hard-won or hard W-O-N. All of our hard-won abilities are now available. We're moving into the synthesis petals. We can wield these things and not be subject to physicality, to the usual desires, or to mentality. They are our instruments. You know, we're told of the Master that time and space are his playthings. So we're moving into that kind of ability and attitude. There's skillful use of thought. There are challenges ahead. We have to give everything here, give it all. You know, we give everything, and that makes it possible for us to have the privilege to face the great renunciation or the great relinquishment. When we give it all away, we are light enough, small enough, compact enough, pointed enough to move through the eye of the needle. I'm thinking about here how the Dalai Lama had to leave Tibet, you know. He fought for a while to stay in it, but he had to leave. He was expelled. Well, he left on purpose, of course, but he realized the kind of imprisonment that would have occurred, and so he moved. He gave it all away, in a way. He gave his homeland, his castle, his palace, the great art and the traditions all accumulated and so forth. He gave all that away so we could move into the wider expression. This is part of, you know, giving up what is in the causal body, I would say, for him. There are some temptations in this petal. You know, we're focused in petal 8, and also in petal, part of petal 9 is dealing with those temptations. We increasingly will confront the three-headed dog of hell, you know, Cerberus. That's in the Capricorn part of this work. We're focused at first in an area between the second and third degree. That's where the real work is occurring. But, you know, I've been talking a lot in terms of the achievement that comes when all 9 petals are open. But there is the work to rid ourselves of final glamours and certainly of illusion through the intuition, and to become a very clear thinking person, able to think the plan. There are strong tests before the third degree. Obviously, it's still about will, the divine will versus the entire dweller in on the threshold. So we can't just have good intentions. We have to really forcefully deal with illusion and make sure that we are no longer subject to fear, hatred. No, it's not that. It's pride, separativeness, and cruelty. The fragmentation of our perceptions have to be overcome in this petal, in which we can say that the whole is seen as one. And also, we could say that in rule number 5, for disciples and initiates, there is a relation to this petal. Let's see, how does it go? I know it by memory and then I don't know it by memory. But, around page 20 here, what is said, excuse me. Oh yeah, in unison let the group perceive the triad shining forth, dimming the light of soul and blotting out the light of form. The macrocosmic whole is all there is. You see, intimations of that kind of holistic perception are coming to us here. Let the group perceive that whole, and then no longer use the thought, my soul and thine. If we're still in the my soul and thy soul stage, we have not fully passed the tests of illusion, and nor have we achieved the unitive perception that is given in this petal. Okay, what else? Well, this is about getting rid of illusion, getting rid of certain beliefs, facing certain mental challenges. We're inhibiting our intuition if we have a false vision of the plan. A true vision of the plan is really resonant with the intuition. The intuition confers a true vision of the plan. So the battle with illusion, and those Stymphalian birds in Sagittarius really can represent illusion. There is a Sagittarian battle with illusion, which has to do with ahamkara and the sense of separateness and separativeness and isolation, and all of that has to be overcome in this petal. We're on our way to selflessness. It's not complete, of course, for the true fourth degree initiate. It's more complete. But we're beginning to lose that lower identity that we have used all the way up from the time of individualization, and that there can be some fear around that process as we begin to merge. Merging causes many people fear. We start to feel the fourth degree and the challenges ahead. We kind of know if we go into this realm that the Via Dolorosa will face us. We're moving towards increasing transparency. The soul, by the time this is unfolded, is in full bloom. So nothing really should stand in the way of revealing the qualities of the soul, but some of those qualities can stand in the way of revealing still higher necessities. Are there temptations? Temptations are an unfolding ninth petal issue. Yes, and also an eighth petal issue. We have the Syrian, Venusian, second ray illumined energies. And Sirius, when truly embraced, will extract us from susceptibility to the temptations in the desert. So there's something quite speedy about this petal with its Sagittarian implications. Also, Aries moves fast. We have fought it out in the desert. We still have fights ahead, but having overcome the world, the flesh, and the devil in the latter part of Petal 8 and maybe some of the early work of Petal 9, because in order to overcome the world, the flesh, and the devil, we need that higher perspective. We need to see things from a more cosmic, more philosophical, larger point of view, and that will help us extricate ourselves from the world, the flesh, and the devil. So here are some of the statements that were given having to do with the temptations in the desert, and I think we could just read them and understand how the Christ dealt with these temptations, and the idea that they are also involved with the ninth petal work has to do with the straightness with which he enunciated his statements to the devil. You know, it's the direct Sagittarian speech. He said it exactly what it is with pure truth. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. So different ideas come here, you know. The temptation of service, the concept of service. Am I dealing with people physically, or am I going to serve in another way? What degree of pride or spiritual ambition is left in my service? I am beginning to renounce. What do I need to sustain me as I renounce while I am serving? How much can I sacrifice my body's well-being? What do I feel hunger for? Bread is money too, you know. And with these powers, one could produce a lot of money by non-legitimate means. So the ends can be seen by some to justify the means, and that's not the way to go. What do I need for myself? Foregoing the bread we might be easily able to produce. So we're reminded we must ask nothing for the personal self, even though we could produce it. I think Moses did something, didn't he? On the mountain, he struck the rock, did he not? He made it give water. He did something which prevented him from entering the promised land. Anyway, what is for me and what is for the service? Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. It's the great word of God which is the sustaining factor, and when we adhere to that word and become that word, our living shall be taken care of. Here is another of the statements of the Christ to the devil. Okay. Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. It is eternal because it is written, you will not deviate me. Again, you know, he would be preserved, casting himself down from a high place by the use of power for personal means. So there's the personality and the soul. The soul is impersonal and relates to the greater good. The devil wants him to use his power for himself. That's the temptation, you know. All these riches that we are accumulating, will they be used for ourselves? Ego, popularity would come, you know, the popularity of those who so-called have sold their soul to the devil. Look, what an amazing teacher of miracles, a crowd pleaser, you know. Sai Baba comes to mind here. Do a miracle and attract the attention of the crowd. So again, what is the ends and what is the means? If I were popular, I could then really serve. You see, that idea comes to mind. It's kind of tempting. So delaying now what you do, what you can do now under difficult circumstances. You should not tempt God. You shall not tempt the soul, which is God, to descend into the realm of personal motive. Don't make God use his powers for personal reasons. You know, there is that idea that if one were truly noticed and noticeable and endowed with riches and power, think how one could serve. But of course, one might just end up serving himself, because the Ahamkara would not have been defeated. Two ideas of God, two perceptions. One is immanent, one is transcendent. God and the devil together. Daemon is Deus inversus. The devil is God inverted, or turned inside out. Discriminations are here to be mastered concerning the serving of the sun and the moon. We have the right hand and the left hand path. Certainly the members of the left hand path consider themselves quite magnificent, and in mentality and general willpower they are. In love they are not. So the left hand path, even though maybe producing some outstanding individuals at first, is always personal and selfish. So basically the Black Lodge uses divine power for personal means. In other words, now I am elite. I have power. Scorpio has power. How will this be used? So, so what might happen is the defiance of nature and natural law, even divine law, for the sake of reputation in order to seem great. And this would be a human way. It would veer us off onto the left-hand path. Well, here is another statement that the Christ made. Get thee from me, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. So here we are using the first aspect. We're avoiding this trade-off. We're avoiding the tendency of others to worship us because of our magnificent demonstrations. We are adhering to the idea that only God, only the good, only the true Logos is to be worshipped. We're using the law of repulse here. It's a real rejection of the entire satanic nature. Satan here is the 666, is the rejection of the lunar nature. And instead, my love will go to God, Sirius, Venus, hierarchy, and not to the lunar life. Well, this is, we apparently had quite a bit to say about this. Goodness me. We did. So let us continue to say it. So generally, let's take a look at that. Get thee hence, Satan. Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. I wonder if we looked at this in terms of, let's go here for a moment and go to Google. When in doubt, go to the great knowledge. It's kind of interesting how much knowledge there is. They're waiting. I don't want films. I don't want any of that. Do I? I don't. Huh. How can I get rid of it? All right, let's this page, media, I just, okay. No, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that at all. So I'm going to have to, I have to get rid of this. So, going off for a moment. So here we have, various versions of this. The angels, if he throws himself from the high place, the angels will bear him up, so he will not even strike his foot against a stone. And Jesus said to him, it is said, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. You shall not tempt the Lord your God as you tempted him in Massa. So there are various ways in which he has repudiated the idea that he would not be harmed if he threw himself from a high place. Okay, so here is the third temptation. Satan is saying to Jesus, or actually the Christ it will be, all these things I will give to you if you will fall down and worship me. And then Jesus said to him, go, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and began to minister to him. Now, and there are the different translations of this. So, the whole idea of how one shall live and whether one can make the bread by unlawful means and sustain oneself that way, whether one should seek the admiration of the crowd and throw oneself from a high place and the angels will bear one up and one will not be at all hurt, and then the crowd will give one their belief and allegiance and service, or whether one should worship Satan and all things will be given to him. Well, in each way, each time the Christ rebuked these thoughts. They probably, perhaps, were these presented by some sort of demon, or was it the nature itself of the man that presented these thoughts and then had to be rebuked? So, get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God only. And so this is the request by Satan that Christ worship him. And the other one here is the Satan asks the Christ to throw himself down from a high place. And he will not be hurt, and then all shall see him as the miracle worker. And here, I think man shall not live by bread alone. Let's look at that and see how that looks. Man shall not live by bread alone. And let's see. It is written. Okay, these are the temptations. And the tempter came and said to him, if you are the Son of God, command that these stones become bread. But he answered, and he could have done it, of course, but he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, on bread alone, but on every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. So there he was choosing to say that the vitality of the body and the sustainment of the body does not come only from natural sources, but from the high source of the soul and the higher divine energies. So the tempter wanted him to make the stones into bread, and I'll put that down. The tempter asked Christ to make stones into bread, and instead Christ pointed to the true source of vitality and sustenance, the Word of God. Oh, that's the will of God, the Word of God. Okay. Well, I think we have these correct now, and he answered in a very direct way. And that directness relates to Sagittarius, indeed. So some of this is occurring in the Sagittarian petal, where through the great and wider understanding one can confront these sinuous temptations of the devil. Many people succumb for some lives to these temptations until they finally cast it aside. The choices begin with true self-consciousness at the fifth petal, when the solar angel offers an alternative, and then you have two paths, and before that you have only had the tendencies of matter itself. So your behavior has been necessarily lunar. When the fifth principle is present, you are responsible under Saturn and Libra for your choices, so your mind is growing, and now you must decide. Saturn and Libra offer a choice, and this comes in at the eighth petal. One can veer off towards Advici, or the eighth sphere, and reject the triads, we are told. The rejection of the third hierarchy lands a man in the eighth sphere. The other path will give much to me personally, the left-hand path, and if we're still the victim of our own ahamkara, we may well choose that, but DK has told us how rarely choice is made, which tells us about the incredibly triumphant work of the spiritual hierarchy. But if I choose the Syrian path, it will unite me in love with the whole. So I will become impersonal in the higher sense, personality will be subdued, and then the temptations which in a way arise from the energies of the first solar system, they will be subdued. So in passing these temptations, I'm glad there's a chance to talk about them in greater detail here. We are cutting ourselves off from the first solar system tendencies, which were largely personal tendencies. After all, it was in a way the fourth solar system, and being the first major, so in a sense it is the personal solar system based upon mind. based upon the third aspect. Can we equate? It came up. Can we equate the three temptations to meditation, study, and service? Well, if you use the Antikarana meditation, you will go all the way into the stream of will. You will lose yourself and enter impersonal will. Then when you come back down, how will you outpicture that? How will you outpicture the will of God? I think if we ascend via the Antikarana, we cannot possibly veer off onto the left-hand path. I think we can only truly ascend to the monastic permanent Adam once we have passed these temptations, because the triad is completely impersonal and is completely immersed in the divine plan. So as I said, if we reject the triads, we don't really build the Antikarana, we build some kind of false Antikarana, which DK has described, and it involves the Deva evolution. I don't know the technicalities of it, but we refuse to become a Christ. We refuse to travel on the Syrian line, to enter the realm of divine love. We refuse all that, and instead greatly augment the tendencies of the previous solar system, which are no longer suited for us here. So a lot of this has to be decided in the later 8th and the early 9th petal. Is it possible to touch the abstract mind and still stay selfish? I think in certain respects it is, especially if the mental unit has not become soul infused. We could be bypassing the soul. We're told that some of the black magicians, they do work on the higher mental levels, but whether they could ever really connect with the spiritual triad using the power of the soul and love, I don't think they could do that. They can use a powerful ajna center, but one of the functions of the ajna is cut off from them. So if that function dies, they are effective in their own lower way, because the ajna center is really meant to display the second aspect of divinity and to connect with the spiritual triad. There is a way in which the four aspects of the ajna center will connect with Buddhi, with its fourfold nature, and the black magician cannot tolerate the presence of the Buddhic energy, the Christ energy. The White Lodge can include lower functions, but the Black Lodge cannot include the higher. They can do their own form of healing. They are found, particularly on the astral and lower mental planes. We have to dissociate from them in the work of these petals. But none of them, we are told, actually are found on the physical plane per se. They do not incarnate in that way, so they are subtler beings than those we say, aha, there's a incarnated member of the Black Lodge. We're actually talking about those who serve them and are not as powerful as they are. But have made that choice for the left-hand path, but not the true black magician. Ambition can be tested between the second and third degree. Spiritual ambition is what we're talking about here, and if the ambition becomes too great, the progress is stopped, and we may veer off. There are 5 vices that remain to be addressed between the second and third initiation: hate, love of power, pride, separativeness, and cruelty. And these are the most difficult to deal with, especially for the person who begins to make his concrete mind a separate sphere. That's said to be the greatest disaster that can befall a man. Obviously, the concrete mind is meant to blend and merge with the soul on the higher mental plane, and for some it doesn't do that. And then they make of it a separative sphere, a separative and separate sphere. It becomes a 13th sphere, and they begin to follow the left-hand path, a great disaster. Fear may be behind that choice because we are afraid of losing our first solar system prerogatives. Because after all, these were initiates in the first solar system. I think when we look at the first solar system, 3 types can be found. The the solar angels who succeeded, the members of the Black Lodge who were initiates and would not relinquish their prerogatives and came over into the present solar system insisting on imposing those values that they held at that time, regardless of what was attempting to be developed in the second solar system. And then the nomads. We call them sometimes the Jews, but of course it doesn't mean the present Jewish race. It is the nomads who came, they were individualized there, but they had not achieved as they needed to and needed the development of the next solar system, and they arrived on Earth even before the individualization, at least some of them did, before individualization came to Earth humanity. Did they come to the moon chain? That is a point for discussion. So anyway, there's this fear of vulnerability. You know, love makes us vulnerable. Love demands vulnerability. The majority of these black magicians are third-ray monads and first-ray souls. And so they learn love last. They have not yet learned love, but at some point in the process of the universe they will have to. Maybe not in this solar system. So, as I said, most are first-ray souls. Maybe the six heads are still to be tested here. Maybe bread, you know, the temptation of bread tests comfort. Can we, even though we could gain the bread, can we stand not to have it if the gaining is by illegitimate means? So certain desire themes are being dealt with in this, in these temptations. It's all really a question of whether we can conquer the great illusion. What do I believe reality actually is? Will I go with certain desires which lead in the opposite direction to reality, or will I, even though I don't fully know reality, will I go with my intuition of what it is and then refuse to do certain things which I know will simply chain me to a previous type of pattern? There you can see Capricorn holding the man and woman in chains. That's the Capricorn Tarot card. And it has a lot to do with the third aspect, being chained by the third aspect. We are chained if we do not pass our temptations. So we have to deal with temptations in three ways: the physical, emotional, and mental. And we're dealing with these Hydra heads really at each initiation, but there is a certain emphasis of the mental heads, and at the third initiation the astral heads at the second and the physical heads at the first. We may not have thoroughly conquered them until finally we are able to hold the whole Hydra up into the realm of the intuition. We're thinking here of the trials of Job. Can you still love God no matter what befalls you? Well, it depends on how you identify. If I believe form to be real, it may be more difficult. If I believe form to be illusion, then God will be real, and I will love God regardless of the pains that befall me especially between the second and third initiation, the most trying time, the most painful time. We're talking about the ending of illusion and how the sounding of the cymbals drives the Stymphalian birds away. Maybe we recognize the one sound that the clanging of the cymbals can symbolize, if I may say, and then hearing the one sound instead of the many separative sounds, we will be free from illusion. Indra, who represents the intuition, used sound and destroyed Vrita. That reminds us of the vibrations or the vritis, the many vibrations. Instead, the one was seen. As the cymbals crash, the cymbal and cymbals are related. The crashing of cymbals reminds us of Vulcan and the spiritual will. It disorganizes the lesser relationships and allows the archetype to come in. I think, the hammer of Vulcan is involved here. the crashing of the hammer down upon the anvil and the crashing of the cymbals together, has to do with the imposition of the will and understanding of God, and all the lesser conditions are disorganized. In Sagittarius, the sky is darkened by birds, all of our mental formulations which have conditioned our behavior. They have to be banished, and the one great sound banishes them. Capricorn is still involved here. We can enter the cave in Hades. There's not much light when dealing with Cerberus. In order to achieve, we have to descend into the lower depths, and Capricorn is certainly part of that, as long as we don't get stuck in the lower depths and identify them. We talked about mudras a little bit and their symbolism in the initiation process, and the disciple must always be ready to use sacred methods to bring the power in. Symbols at this point are unitive. They bring the higher world into the lower. So we're fighting with illusion. We can use sound, we can use symbol to help dissipate the illusion. The symbol reminds us of the archetype. The archetype is the pattern as it should be, not the conditions as they are. And at this point, we do this in the Morya Federation, but we could study the 7 illusions set forth in a Glamour World Problem, and to study these illusions and their cures would be very interesting, because it tells us how we can rid ourselves of illusion. Now, this is going to be very important in this particular petal. I wonder, just looking here, if it might be wise to just mention this. Illusion, cure, I wonder, cure or patient, illusion, no, spirit, maybe that will do it, and maybe not. Well, anyway, in this book, the 7 illusions are listed. Well, I feel I just have to mention them. Illusion demonstrates in 7 ways. Usually now we have a whole unit in the Morya Federation where we study this. But illusion can come through wrong perception of an idea, and it elaborates this, and then it gives a cure. The cause is the untrained, unillumined mind. The cure is training in the technique of Raja Yoga. Okay, I'm just mentioning these, and you can study these on your own or in the Morya Federation, but obviously this work of ridding oneself from illusion can be done in Sagittarius in the 9th petal. Illusion through wrong interpretation. The cause is an overestimation of one's mental powers. The sin par excellence of the mental type is pride, and that colors all activities in the early stages. The cure is the development of a cautious spirit. We can see, can't we, how these methods can be applied. Illusion through wrong appropriation of ideas. The cause is overstimulation of personality and undue impress of personality reactions upon the sensed idea and upon all who attempt to contact the same idea. The cure is a steady attempt to decentralize the life from the personality and to center it in the soul. Illusion through wrong direction of ideas. Its cause is a small and non-inclusive mind. Not very flattering, is it? Its cure is the training of the mind to be inclusive, well-stocked, and well-developed from the angle of modern intelligence. Illusion through wrong integration of an idea. Its cause is selfish grasping for the little self, even if this is unrealized and the disciple is glamored by the idea of his own selfless interests. Its cure is a humble spirit. Illusion through wrong embodiment of ideas. Its cause is a lack of esoteric training in creative activity. Obviously, white magic wouldn't be involved here. Its cure is the application of fifth-ray methods, which are the methods of the mental plane. This form of error seldom applies to the average aspirant and concerns an illusion which is the testing applied to many initiates of fairly high degree. The ordinary disciples such as you and others in this group seldom touch a pure idea and hence seldom need to embody it. Okay. 7. Illusion through wrong application of ideas. And does it say anything further here about the cure? Not sure it does. Let's go down here just a little bit. Apparently not. So we could just read a little bit about what it says of the 7th type of illusion. How often does this form of illusion descend upon a disciple? He contacts an idea intuitively and also intelligently. Note the distinction here expressed, and misapplies it. This is perhaps an aspect of the synthetic illusion or the illusion of the whole of the mental plane as modern man contacts it. Illusion varies from age to age according to what the hierarchy is attempting to do, or according to the general trend of men's thoughts. The disciple can therefore be swept into wrong activity and a wrong application of ideas because the general illusion, growing out of the 6th type of illusions to which I above referred, is over-dominant in his mind. So, and here the summary is the way of wrong perception, the way of wrong interpretation, the way of wrong appropriation, the way of wrong direction, the way of wrong integration, the way of wrong embodiment, the way of wrong application. Can we relate these to the 7 rays? Perhaps, I don't know. It doesn't seem that they would be necessarily in order. So anyway, further study can be done here because in this petal we are really working at the dispelling of illusion. Now some pretty non-intuitive methods are used here, but also the intuition, after all, dispels illusion. So where are we here in the comments that have been made? The 7 illusions, we've looked at this. So there is service going on here in these petals, and we, at the 3rd degree, we turn our back on the supernal light in order to serve, but still we are stimulated by it. So what is this? Are we walking up the mountain backwards? Well, we certainly have to face the field of service. These are some random thoughts about Capricorn. It can apply to the 2nd initiation also, the one who crosses the water, right? But there has to be a time to cultivate the blinding light and be concerned with it. And St. Paul, in the process of his 3rd degree, as it apparently went on over a number of years, was reaching out towards the light. DK tells us when he was writing the letters to the Hebrews. At the 3rd degree, the light is blinding, and now you have it, and reverse your direction. You don't face the light blinded to the issues of the world of men and pass on your way to the great center of absorption. Rather, you revolve upon the pedestal of light and carry it to those who are on the darkened path. But the light, each time we face the light in the initiations of Capricorn, but we don't really face an aspect of the light supernal until the 3rd degree. Well, okay, now someone suggested the Lord of the Rings here, and Frodo, how deadly gruesome it is to go towards the 3rd initiate. The sky is black, okay. Well, perhaps these Stymphalian birds can render the sky black. Frodo must unite the 3 rings. He is uniting them. He has little to go on except the willingness and to do his duty. He is a custodian of some inner directive. He doesn't know what the plan is, but he continues. I guess he is the kind of disciple that we are, and he's certainly tempted by the power, isn't he? So the 3 rings, humans, trolls, and devas, and 1 ring controls all, and they belong to the kingdoms. Well, someone knew a lot about the Lord of the Rings here. The major thing about temptations is do not use the newly accessed soul powers, God's powers, for personal ends, for comfort, for ego, for aggrandizement. You know, we could have all the bread we want. We could be exalted in the eyes of others. We could receive everything we possibly want in the lower three worlds by worshiping the devil, by worshiping the lower powers, but we cannot choose that. We have not to become a predator, member of the predator elite or the dark aristocracy. We have to have the decision to serve unconditionally. It's certainly possible to use soul powers for selfish ends, and some of those who tread the left-hand path can use the lower powers of the soul, especially the knowledge petals, for their own selfish ends. The basic thing you have to say to yourself, I won't use soul powers to make my life easier. I will not sell out. I know it's a tough path. I'm on a tough path, and I will use my powers only for that path and not for the path of greater ease. So those temptations really face one in Scorpio. And I imagine in the 8th petal, we have to make very sure we can deal with all the heads reasonably so. By the time Scorpio is working through the 9th petal, we had better master everything and not be able to succumb to any type of temptation that would drag us back into the vice of the lower worlds. So I'm on a tough path. I will not choose the path of greater ease. I can include the lower instrument. Yes, it is an instrument, and I can nurture that instrument in the right way, but not to make my life easier. I do not identify with the satisfactions to be had within the lower instruments. I can take care of the instrument, or I can indulge it. And if I fall victim to the temptations, I indulge the lower instrument. It is said here that we can love ourselves from the heart center, realizing our place in all things, but not from the solar plexus center. So it's not that we have to fall in love with the personality qualities of ourselves, but we have to value our soul qualities and use the personality qualities according to the dictates of the soul. So we use the instrument, we keep it in good shape, and when the higher values come, and it is necessary to sacrifice the instrument for these values, then we do it. You know, in a way, the rich young man was so much in love with his attainments and accomplishments that he did not want to relinquish them. He was still attached. 6th petal issues are involved here, but they're always related to 8th petal issues. Well, okay, you know, there are different people here that have gone through process. Why am I starving? Because I'm trying to do something difficult, and a man is implicated here. In order to get gold, you have to compromise the physical if you're not patient. And a time will come when some aspect of the energy system will be compromised. Now, will it be compromised for wrong motive, or will we simply subdue it in order to sustain our right motive? Look at Father Damien on Molokai Island with the lepers. He gave up everything and eventually contracted leprosy itself. He had a much easier way, but he went instead into the 4th initiation, as did the initiate Jesus, because DK mentions Father Damien and Jesus in the same breath. Well, so we really get our 9 petals worth here in the final initiation in this tier. Yeah, in order to really accomplish the defeat of illusion, we have to be silent. In Sagittarius is also said to be a sign of silence, eventual silence. It's also a sign of great noise and inappropriate speech and blurting things out. But that comes earlier, and we realize the need for silence in which intuitive wisdom can be apprehended. And we can come into a connection with that which the eye hath not seen and the ear hath not heard, the ordinary eye and ear. So some things Sagittarius begins to know, and we begin to know in this petal, cannot be reduced to words. So the key to silence, the key here is silence, and the big sound will come through. It's the sound of the spirit. It's the sound of the monad. And the higher mind is no longer so talky. But even more so at Initiation 4, we're told that Master Jesus maintained a profound silence before his Roman inquisitors and persecutors. Some random thoughts are coming here. I graduated from a university in which the yellow and the blue, the colors of Sweden, were prominent. But Master DK's colors are sometimes said to be the yellow and the blue. So here, because we're overcoming illusion, we are wiping out, we're blotting out form. We no longer see the form as real. It's not quite there yet, but okay, it's happening in this petal. And when the causal body goes, form is entirely blotted out, and the form of the fourth kingdom is no longer needed as an attraction, and the form of the fourth kingdom can be generated as needed by our own Kriya Shakti. So we're generating the single eye here. We're seeing all things as if they were one thing. We're trying not to be caught in discrimination between this and that as if this and that were different, but to be totally inclusive as if we were seeing all things from the mountaintop. And the mountaintop is part of this, definitely part of the experience of this petal. We are lotuses of revelation. We see from above. We can reveal the one. We understand that there, in any solar system, there are lotuses within lotuses, and we're moving from light conveying as translucent beings to being transparent beings. Is there one particular planet for each petal? Maybe there is, certainly in the solar system. If there's one sign, then maybe one planet for one petal. I can't believe that this is the final sort of statement that lots of spices make a good stew. Well, I think we're talking about the contrast between variety and the many, many energies we are acquainted with and are using, and the oneness which is beginning to be appreciated, the one and the many. Problems concerning the one and many are solved in this petal. The vision of the one and yet the vision of the many as the one. This is the gift of the third initiation, and this is what is finally accomplished in petal number 9, when it is fully unfolded. Well, friends, some of those comments were a bit scattered. I do realize you never can tell what the state of mind of a class is going to be and how people will come in with different thoughts, some of them right on target and others of them very tangential. But this is going to be the end of Egoic Lotus webinar commentary program 59, and it's going to be part 3 of synthesis for petal 9, and it's going to be 3 hours and about 5 minutes. And then we will move on to a whole new section. We're finished with discussing the gathering of thoughts in relation to the 9 petals. We're going to be beginning of Egoic Lotus webinar commentary program 60, and it's going to be discussion of the petals of synthesis. I wonder, PTL, Petal of Sacrifice, that won't do. So, synthesis petals. And then after that, we'll look at, I don't think I'm going to go through all of these different stages. I think we have to abbreviate the approach here. I don't need an 80-point outline. I think we can understand what might be continued between the third and fourth initiation. So I'll gather for program number 60 some of DK's comments and just look at them and then try to, maybe off the top of my head somewhat, talk about how synthesis of knowledge, synthesis of love, and synthesis of will can be achieved in these three lemon yellow Buddhic petals, leading to the revelation of the jewel and the shining forth of the monad as the jewel in the lotus, causing the destruction of the egoic lotus. So maybe by the time we reach, I don't know, 65 programs perhaps, or 70 programs at the most, maybe, we will be finished with this Egoic Lotus webinar book. So, okay, you have 9 petals to study and many energies to correlate, and I'll try to go on before much time has passed into the discussion of the synthesis petals. We're going into an area which is not terribly defined because, you know, for most of us, the direct application to the factor of synthesis is not our next task. We have a lot to do just to achieve the unfoldment of the 9. But when we are initiates of the 3rd degree and working towards the 4th, the synthesis will be, the conscious approach to synthesis will be the great factor, and maybe we can anticipate some of that. Okay, friends, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.